Hi everyone, Oisin and Stepan here. We are going to record our first training game. Oisin is a patron in the Bobby Fischer tier and we've been having lessons for the past month and a half. He's rated around 1600 FIDE when he gets his rating, but his strength is much higher, I believe. Oisin, would you like to add anything?
No.
Okay, so we played our first game 2 days ago. And we tried to record the video immediately, but something was wrong with the sound, so now we have to redo it. Did you prepare for the game at all, Oisin?
Briefly, with white, I was going to play d4, which I never do.
Okay, and it's strange to say this for the third time. It was a nice surprise for us when we tried to record the video for the first time. Anyway, Oisin doesn't play d4, and he expected me to play the semi-Slav. I don't play the Nimzo-Indian, so he was going to play d4, I was going to play the Nimzo-Indian, so, well, I don't know who would have been worse off there. And we played random colors, so he didn't know if he was going to have white or black. Did you prepare with the black pieces at all?
No. Which, I mean, I should have, but yeah. I didn't.
3 weeks ago we had a lesson in which we were going over Oisin's repertoire. Sorry about the crickets, by the way, I'm outside and it's really loud. We prepared Oisin's repertoire, and his biggest hole or his biggest weakness was the Closed Sicilian. So I decided to play that. Oisin, do you remember what we were looking at during the lesson?
Just sort of G3 systems that I can play in the Closed Sicilian.
Yeah, and...
yeah, well, we look at a6 as being the best second move for black, or the trickiest at least.
Yeah, we were looking at a6 as the best response, not knight c6 or e6 or d6 or g6 or whatever else. a6 is hard to meet because it stops bishop b5, and in these structures white will usually want to trade off this bishop for the b8 knight because he wants to play d3. Yeah. And did you prepare those lines after the lesson?
Well, yeah, I looked very briefly at them. You can tell that openings aren't my strong suit, but there's some. Basically, you play b5 with bishop b7, and then e6, and you try and play something of a normal Closed Sicilian apart from that. But I think the queenside expansion gives black good chances. Yeah,
it does. If white plays his normal setup, then I would say the game is rather boring. So before the game I knew that I was probably going to play knight c3, and I knew that you were going to play a6 against that. So 10 minutes before the game I tried to find something you didn't know, and apparently I managed. I played the move d4. Didn't know that move?
No.
Okay, so it might seem strange allowing queen d4 and knight c6 a tempo. But after the queen gets to e3, the queen is stopping queen b6, which is good. And white can now castle kingside or queenside, and the queen also supports e5. So the move makes sense. Which candidate moves did you look at here?
I looked briefly at e6, but I decided I was going to play g6.
Well, that's the thing. e6 is objectively the best move. And g6 is a setup you know how to play, so it makes more sense. And I did the same thing after you'd played g6. I knew you were going to play g6 because you played g6. Let me just turn off this engine thing, disable. Okay. And the normal setup for white here is bishop e2, bishop g7, knight f3, and this is the setup white is going to play against e6 and g6. And I didn't like this.
I'm probably equal here.
Well, you are equal. Perhaps white is slightly better after you play g6, but if you play e6 and bishop e2 and knight f6 or knight, what's even better, knight e7, knight f3, then it's completely equal.
Yeah.
But after g6 I didn't want to play those positions. I wanted to play Grand Prix setups, which I know. So I played f4. And now, since you played g6, you have to continue with bishop g7. Okay. Is there any other move for white apart from knight f3?
I mean, not one that's very logical.
Yeah, because usually in these lines with d4, queen d4, knight c6, queen e3, the pawn is still on f2, and the queen usually goes to g3.
Yeah,
so
G3.
this idea of bishop d4 isn't dangerous, and now allowing bishop d4 would be bad. Knight f3. Okay, d6 is, I think, the best move. Probably knight f6 is too risky at the moment,
Oh, okay.
but I'm not sure.
No, h5 probably.
Yeah, knight
Oh no, h5 to g4. Okay. Knight g4.
I'm not sure where my queen goes, because your knight is going to get to h6. And
I didn't really like this. Perhaps I was wrong.
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to play g4 later on, but the problem is you are going to have d6, which is going to crush my center.
Yeah.
And then I'm still going to have to play h3 to play g4.
Well, if I ever pass queenside, you're going to have h3 g4 and or kingside. You're going to have h3 g4 and a ready-made attack.
Well, that's true, but castle queenside is not an option either. So, well, that's the idea behind Grand Prix setups.
If I castle kingside.
Yeah, I know that it's unsafe, but I'm just saying that you cannot castle queenside either. And that's the idea behind the Grand Prix, that whenever you castle, white is supposed to be faster in the attack. Okay.
Yes.
d6. Here I perhaps wasted a move, but I didn't want to allow bishop g4 or knight f6, knight g4. Because now I played h3.
Well, I was going to play bishop g4 if you didn't play h3.
Yeah,
so
well, that makes sense. But I think now you have knight f6.
I probably do.
Stakes.
Knight d5.
I mean, I probably have to play bishop e2. And I would be black here.
Yeah.
I just hate this position for white. b2 is weak, my king is weak.
I'm a pawn.
Yeah. Well, that's not as relevant, I think, because I still have an attack, but you're going to castle. Once you castle, it's nothing.
Yeah.
So, h3, and I think you should have gone for knight f6, because because if I don't play e5, what am I going to play? I mean, I can try bishop d3, or probably bishop d3, or bishop c4, but then b5. Yeah. Okay, but after h3, you played aggressively. Can you explain your thoughts here?
Right. What?
Explain your reasoning behind the next move.
b5.
Yeah.
It's a theme. I've played a6.
And yeah. But does that mean that you have to play b5?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I thought I want to get pressure on the diagonal.
Okay.
I like the expansion. I possibly want to put my bishop on b7.
Okay. Well, I think you can do all of that later. I was not sure about knight f6 during the game, but I was looking at e6.
That knight was just so misplaced for the entire game.
Yeah. I think if you're going to play b5, bishop b7, then e6, knight e7. Firstly, e6 stops f5.
Yeah.
And if ever e5, you can play d5.
Yeah.
And your bishop is bad, but you can always go bishop f8 and reroute it here.
Yeah.
So I was actually worried about e6, and I didn't know what to do against that, because bishop c4 doesn't really work. You probably have d5 immediately. I would have to play bishop d3, and then knight e7, castles, and black should be fine. You might even win my bishop here.
Even slightly better, maybe.
Yeah. But b5, which I didn't think was a bad move. I knew that the engine will say it's bad, but for humans, I think it was a good move.
Yeah.
Okay, bishop d3, and now queen a5.
Which is just a blunder, probably.
Yeah. So, okay, bishop d3 I thought was a good move until I saw that after queen a5 I cannot castle. So what's the point? After queen a5, I knew that queen a5 could come. I was going to play bishop d3, and then if queen a5, I was going to castle. And the variation I was looking at...
It looked good originally, but...
Yeah, and later on I found out that it actually is good, the queen exchange. I'm going to show you now. So bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, bishop chasing the queen away, and queen c5, which I was afraid of, being a pawn down and having to trade the queens off. It's actually great for white after a4.
Yeah.
Because your queen side is really weak. I'm probably going to win the pawn back. I have the bishop pair and I have f5.
Yeah, okay.
And knight g5, knight e5. So this is good for white. I didn't see it though. After bishop d3, queen a5, I didn't want to give up my pawn and trade the queens off. So I started calculating. What did you expect here?
Bishop d2.
Bishop d2, yeah. It is the best move. But as I said, I just wanted to castle. I didn't want to allow all of that. Okay, so after bishop d2, b4 is the only move.
Yeah.
And now, what did you expect? Knight d5 or knight d1?
I expected knight d5.
Okay. After knight d5, that's a pawn sacrifice, you could call it that. And after rook b1, last time we recorded, you said you wanted to take on a2. Okay, and I analyzed the position after queen a2. I don't have to castle.
I'm just dead lost.
It's dead lost, but not after castling. After castling, white is like +3.
Yeah.
It's dead lost after check here.
And king d8?
King d8, rook takes bishop, queen takes rook, knight takes rook, queen check, takes, queen check, and you just lose everything.
Yeah, okay, right.
You lose everything and you're getting mated. Yeah, so knight d5, bishop b2, rook b1, the best move would be bishop g7.
Yeah.
And now I mean, I can probably just play a3, because if you take with the queen, I have knight c7.
Yeah.
If you don't take
You're
with the
probably
queen,
winning.
yeah. So knight d5 was the best move. I didn't see all of this, and I was looking at my problem with knight d5 was bishop takes, rook takes, and bishop c3. I didn't like that, but apparently it's also just winning for white, and there are no problems here. Okay, but in the game after b4, I played knight d1. What did you think about that?
Originally, I thought it wasn't a good move.
Well, yeah, I'd spent about 15 minutes on bishop d2, trying to figure out the position after b4.
Yeah.
And I looked at knight d1 when I was calculating that, and I saw that since your pawn is overextended and attacked once already, I can always play b3, knight b2, knight c4 once I move my rook, and your queen is going to have to move anyway, so I didn't think the knight was misplaced, and I thought your queen was misplaced. So the move is definitely worse than knight d5, but still much better for white.
Yeah.
And now, explain your next move, please. Mistakes happen. Don't beat yourself up.
I thought after the queen exchange I'd actually have a quite a good position.
Okay, why?
Well, I mean, I know everything I'm going to say is completely wrong now, but I thought my bishop was active. I thought I had my queen side could be strong. It's actually just very weak.
Okay, let's calculate. So you played queen c5.
Queen c5.
Okay, which options does white have?
Not many good ones except for just trading the queens.
Well, I considered castling briefly until I saw the tactical problem with queen c5, queen takes c5. So after queen c5 takes, d takes c5, what's the problem?
Well, I'm just going to lose a pawn.
Well, there's a way to not lose a pawn, but it involves precise play, which I saw, but it's still very hard for black to react. Okay, so after queen c5, queen takes, pawn takes. Since my b2 pawn is defended, I can just play bishop e3, and now it's really hard to defend. So the only way to defend the pawn is knight d4, and yeah, and after knight d4, knight takes d4. You can either take with the pawn or with the bishop. I definitely expected you to take with the bishop, because if you take with the pawn, this bishop has no future. Yeah,
which is another mistake by me, because bishop takes is. I thought I'd just be leaving myself very weak structurally, but I mean, I'm going to lose the game anyway.
Bishop takes is bad and losing, but
yeah,
I think for a human, pawn takes is much worse, because at least now I don't have pressure on b4.
yeah,
You don't have to waste the tempo on a5, and you can play something. Well, okay, my reasoning was I have to castle soon, because you are going to play bishop b7 and knight f6 and put pressure on e4. And if I don't castle, I can never chase the knight away. If I do castle, I can then play rook e1, and let's say something like this happens.
Yeah.
And white should be better, but it's going to be much harder to win. Okay. And after knight d4, you took with the c-pawn, which the only diagonal your bishop really has is this one, which is occupied by my pawn, by my bishop.
I think it's just a dead piece now.
Yeah, it's especially because f8 is also blocked, and you don't really have any squares.
Yeah.
And now I played bishop d2, which I think is the best move, just to keep the defense of the f4 pawn, and you have to defend your pawn now. a5, and now I played b3. And
did I think for about 10 minutes here?
Wait. Yeah, you spent 10 minutes on knight h6.
I thought for 10 minutes, and up to this point, I thought I was maybe slightly worse. And after b3, I realized I was losing.
Well, this is the point at which I think you could have still fought on with bishop b7. Because now, okay, my plan with white is to play a3. And if you capture, I'm going to take with the rook and have a double attack on a5, which is indefensible. If you don't take, then I'm going to take on b4, you're going to recapture, I'm going to take with my bishop and be a pawn up and have a passed pawn. But the move bishop b7 stops my plans, because if I play a3 now, you can now play knight f6. And if I push e5, you can take here with the bishop and probably do this, activate your bishop, and I would be happy to play black here. It's not that bad. I mean, you are an inactive knight down, but you have 3 pawns for the knight. And, well, yeah, AB, but at least you now have 2 active bishops, and you can probably do this. I don't know, force me around somehow. Maybe castle and try to play actively. Maybe not castle. I'm not sure, but that's one thing I saw. And if you don't want to sacrifice a piece, after bishop b7, knight f6, e5, you can just move your knight and get it into one of these squares. Let's say I try castling now, and you play this. I'd be really happy to have black here. It's not that bad. And what do you take with? If you take with the knight, which is logical, you have to move the bishop once again. And whichever piece you take with, I'm going to recapture with the b pawn, which means that you won't win a pawn. And if you don't take, then I don't know. What do you play here with white? Because now the pawn is defended and the rook is defended, so a takes can be met with a takes.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, maybe this was almost certainly better
well,
than knight h6.
That's the only target in my position, and I saw 2 defenses while you were thinking for the 10 minutes. I thought whether I should play after bishop b7, king e2, knight f6, king f3. This was one option, and the other one was just castles, knight f6, and I wasn't going to play e5. I was going to play rook e1.
Yeah.
And reserve e5 for later, because I didn't want to allow this.
Mm-hmm.
And now you still have to solve this problem, but if you castle and they play a3, well, it's definitely better. At least you're developed and castled.
Yeah.
Okay. And after b3 you played knight h6. Try to give me one reason why that move is good.
Well, the reason is when you play knight b2, knight c4, I want to play bishop e6 to try and trade off my light squared bishop for your knight on c4. But if I play that, you're going to play f5.
Okay. Okay, so you were more worried about that than the fact that your knight doesn't have any squares.
I was worried about both of them, but I'm losing the game either way. So
yeah. Okay, so after knight h6, it's now really easy for white to win a pawn.
Yeah.
a3. I'm not sure rook b8 is the best. At least you can castle. You're losing the pawn anyway. Because rook b8 is a wasted tempo because you are going to give up the rook. So moving the rook doesn't make sense. Either bishop b7 or castles is, in my opinion, what should have been played. But rook b8, a b4, a b4, rook a4, and now you move the rook for nothing. You could have exchanged it with bishop b7 and had an active bishop. Bishop d7, rook b4, bishop b4, and now e5, which is
terrible.
Aggressive. Yeah, aggressive, but gives me a tempo. I can develop and defend my pawn with castles. Now if you take, I'm going to take with the rook. If bishop e5, probably just rook f1, and if you castle, no, you still can't castle, sorry, the bishop is on b4. Yeah, so after castles, you now played f5. How far did you get in your calculation after f5?
Not far enough, but I knew I was losing anyway.
Okay, after f5 I spent...
Let's try, like...
I don't know how long, probably a minute or two, trying to figure out the whole continuation. So what I was looking at is what happened in the game. I'm going to show it now. So fe5, which has to be reacted to with bishop e5. If you take here first, then I'm going to take with the bishop and probably be even better than before because now my rook is controlling the f-file. So bishop e5, e takes f5, knight takes f5, and now rook e1. And after f5, I was looking at this position after rook e1, and I was looking at knight e3, pawn e3, rook e3, and because I couldn't see that far ahead that well, I figured that bishop d4 was a move. But then it hit me, bishop d4 is illegal because it's pinned, and then we played the variation, and after rook e1, you resigned. So what can you learn from the game? Let's try to draw some conclusions.
Never trade.
Never trade when you have a more aggressive position, I would say.
Yeah, never trade when you have a more aggressive position.
And
develop your pieces in castle.
Develop your pieces in castle instead of playing b5, chasing nothing away.
Yeah.
So a6 and followed by b5 is usually played when there's a bishop on c4.
Yeah.
So that it comes with the tempo. And
well, not always.
Not always, but if it's not played when the bishop is on c4, it's almost always played when the knight is already on f6 and you have some control over the center. Yeah. So I think that coming back to the original position, the biggest mistake you did in the game is not being aware that I'm going to prepare for a6. Because we discussed...
Well, you're going to play d4.
Well, it doesn't matter. If you know that you are going to be playing a6 against the Closed Sicilian, then you have to turn on Chessbase or any openings book and be aware of every move that's played. And d4 is... Wait.
I don't think it's ever been played in Grandmaster play.
Let's see.
I looked at it briefly on the it's ever been played.
Yeah, no game found. Okay, well, still, it doesn't make much sense, but it's a setup that you need to know how to play against. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to challenge you and I'm trying to find holes in your repertoire in these training games, and I think that this is going to force you to learn the Closed Sicilian better. Okay, do you have anything to add, Oisin? I'm less disgusted than I was the original time, but I'm still upset with the way I played. Yeah, as I told you when we finished our first video, I find it really. I think it's a great relief to record the video with your mistakes and with the defeat. It's sort of a good event, and it leaves you with less bitterness inside after you've done so, and once everybody knows. So, yeah, just try to learn from the game. We are going to keep working on this. Okay, thanks very much for watching, everybody. I hope you liked the game. If you have any questions for Oisin or me, leave them in the comments below. And stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.